For a better understanding of what it all means, we're joined now by visiting Associate Professor Teresita Cruz del Rosario from the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy in Singapore, and she was recently in Myanmar and she just returned 1 week ago. So thank you very much for joining us this morning. So the by-elections come at a major juncture, of course, in Myanmar's reforms. There's a lot been said about how Myanmar is changing. There's a lot more media freedom. You just came back, so is that what you've seen and what you've felt?
Oh, absolutely. It's been so much more evident in the media sector. I've spoken to about 10 journalists during my visit there. And just to give you an indication of how open the environment has become, the Myanmar Times, which is one of 2 English language newspapers in Myanmar, has posted a report on the front page of the Myanmar Times of a corruption case involving 6 ministries. And the Voice Weekly that reported this story has been taken to court. And the Voice Weekly editors told me that this is welcome news, because in the past they would be banned and closed, but this time they're going to fight it out in the judicial system.
So really it is a lot more open these days?
Very much so.
I see. But before the by-elections, Ms. Suu Kyi herself had said, and these were her words, that they could not be considered genuinely free and fair, and that there were many, many cases of intimidation. While you were there, were you able to determine any of these happening, and is credibility really an issue in these by-elections?
Well, let's put it this way. There have been expected irregularities. The people had expected that, but they are by no means going to render these elections illegitimate. And I think a lot of the observers have already said as much. We're not seeing a sudden reversal of the process just because of these irregularities. If at all, I would consider these as birthing pains of a new nation that's just undergoing an exercise. And that's not only true for Myanmar, but it's true of many other countries in Asia as well.
Okay, so do these elections really mark a start of a real move towards democracy in Myanmar? Because really it's about converting people's expectations into political reality. Do you see that happening?
I would like to think so, and a lot of the Burmese that I've spoken to would really like to put their faith in these elections, as now that's going to be very different from the past. And I think it's something that we should all support.
Okay, so the final results won't be out until about maybe a week more, and if expected, the NLD will win some seats, but will it really have a formal voice in Parliament? You know, what will it take for reform to really take place?
Well, Aung San Suu Kyi faces the task of having to manage expectations. Right. And of course, she has won 44 out of 600 plus seats, so by and large it's not a majority. However, what is very clear in these elections is that the voice of the people was quite strong. So in that sense, while she only won 45 of the seats, there's a very clear sentiment that the country wants her party to be a political force in Parliament. And in that sense, it's not the numbers that we're talking about, it's the sentiment that these numbers carry.
Okay, so let's talk about Ms. Suu Kyi. You know, how do you think she's going to fare in the political arena? Because this transition from her being a prisoner to a parliamentarian is happening so quickly. How do you think she's going to perform?
Well, I think it is not as if this is very quick. Let's remember she ran for elections in 1990 and won, but she was not allowed to take her seat. So if you like, there's been a transition that's been going for the past 20 years. I think what will happen is that that shift from a parliamentarian of the streets into the formal structures of Parliament will entail a lot of give and take, a lot of horse trading, a lot of compromise, a lot of bargaining. And I would like to think that she has been prepped up for the last 20 years to assume this and to expect this. And I hope that the Burmese people will also likewise tame their expectations to expect that there's not going to be dramatic changes overnight.
So, I mean, you were there, you would talk to people on the ground, you talk to locals, both in the urban as well as the rural areas. Are there different expectations in these parts?
By and large, no. I mean, these are the first elections that they have participated in for nearly 20 years. The one overriding expectation is that they hope that finally the new government will deliver, and because Aung San Suu Kyi is there, they hope that the hopes are even higher that she will be able to deliver the reforms that have been promised by the new government.
But beyond these reforms, of course, everyone is looking at how these elections, if free and fair, will affect sanctions that have been imposed on Myanmar. So what do you expect to come out of this?
I think the sanctions will be gradually lifted. It's not going to be an overnight lifting, but we can see an easing of it. There's already a press law that has been drafted by the Ministry of Information, and expectations are the new parliament is going to pass this by the end of the year, which effectively will remove the censorship board, so that's a big step. An investment law has also been crafted by the Ministry of Trade, and that will also come into parliament. So when all of these new laws have been passed by the new parliament, of which Aung San Suu Kyi is a member, we will see more and more of a gradual opening. And in that light, sanctions will probably be lifted.
All right, thank you very much. That's extremely insightful. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Pleasure.
And that was Teresita Cruz del Rosario, visiting associate professor at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy here in Singapore.